You've tuned in to Stranger Than Fiction News, broadcasting live from the dark side of the planet. The full lockdown of America is coming. Ohio has just locked everything down. Restaurants, bars, nightclubs. Italy, France, Spain have all locked down. We're hearing that in Spain and in Italy, you need a special paper to be able to leave your residence at all. Full lockdown, just like that. Now in France, they can still go out and get groceries. How long will that last? How long before that sets in your neighborhood, ladies and gentlemen? That is the question. We've been getting quite a few first-hand accounts from people in different places across the nation telling us about grocery stores being empty, people coughing everywhere, ambulances going berserk. And this is just the beginning of the nightmare, ladies and gentlemen. It's now just about time to hunker down, get in your ark, and just ride this storm out. We're going to be getting into the do's and don'ts about managing this disease, so stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. You can also find some handy notes in the video description. We recommend that you find yourself a detox elixir with as many of those herbs as you can. It will alleviate the respiratory symptoms nearly immediately. In any case, there's a lot of news to cover. We're going to get pretty much right into the news, the latest updates from around the world. Oh, the video guy. Fired. The video guy is fired. Everything is a black hole, they say, mounting dread in the age of the Wuhan supervirus. You've noticed how the libtards are trying to make this some kind of generic disease. This is a weaponized synthetic virus, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing natural about it. It doesn't follow the regular rules of the flu. Everyone will be contaminated. Masks don't work. Nothing works against this virus. Not the tests, not the vaccines, nothing. And we're going to find out more about that as time goes on, ladies and gentlemen. Trump tried to poach German scientists working on a cure, they say, and tried to basically bury the vaccine, is what we're understanding. That's a very interesting report from the Business Insider. We're getting some interference from the Matrix. You checking out this video on the left? This is in Italy. The endless lines out there in the fog on the street. People just trying to get groceries. It's a total lockdown. And again, we're getting reports now that people are not allowed to go outside at all for whatever reason, groceries included. And it's just going to get more and more severe. The restrictions are going to become more and more severe as time goes on. It's going to get worse and worse, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, you know, the China syndrome has begun in America. We're learning that the army in Spain has been deployed to Madrid, Valence, Seville, and other towns, many other towns. We're hearing in this report that you need special papers just to go out in Italy. Otherwise, you face a hefty fine. In the main hospital in Paris, they're reporting that 50% of the sick people are young people. And they are stressing, you know, full confinement in France, so it won't be long before it's the total lockdown over there. What is the video guy doing with these videos? It's you know, all hell is breaking loose. It won't be long before there's food riots and the like. Of course, the sheeple, you know, certainly don't have enough goods to get them through this storm. Everything's going to shut down, all the factories, all the transportation, the truckers, the highways, you name it. And that was part of the plan, to get people, you know, basically in a bad way right away, that they're stuck at home with maybe, you know, a week's worth of supplies, and that's quickly going to run out. Any case, we do have confirmation of a huge amount of U.S. troops in Europe already with equipment to enforce a lockdown. Will they be deployed soon is the question. They're always there for an exercise. 99 cases of coronavirus in the state of Georgia, they say. And this was a pretty creepy video, to say the least. If we can play the sound on this one. So I don't know if they're trying to be cute, but I mean, this is a pretty eerie video. And in fact, you know, all the shelves are pretty much empty. And it's just like, you know, rest in peace out there. Lombardy, Italy, they have one of the best hospitals in the world. They have a nearly 10% death rate. Let that sink in. Young people, 10%, you know, it just keeps getting worse. Tomorrow it'll be 20%, then 30%. Then they'll finally tell you nobody's getting cured. Everybody's going to die, ladies and gentlemen. So there's always something to look forward to. But we're all here with a life sentence anyways, ladies and gentlemen. Although managing the disease will make it a lot better. Department of Motor Vehicle now requires you to make appointments if you want something done. Andrew Cuomo is begging the president, mobilize the military now. We need martial law right now. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we need. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, right now. What is the video guy doing? What is this? Oh, this is a different type of eugenics program. You know that these people are out to kill you, ladies and gentlemen. They're spraying you like bugs. They're erecting death towers everywhere. You know, they're basically feeding you frankenfood, chlorinated chicken with all sorts of growth hormones to accelerate aging. They fluoridate the water. They mandate vaccines. I mean, these are all the red flags of a serial killer. And no surprise, they've unleashed their weaponized doomsday virus out there. No surprise. I think everybody should, you know, bear that in mind when you're thinking about the situation. Nothing about it is natural or normal. This is part of the Agenda 21. And, you know, soon they'll be deploying goon squads, ladies and gentlemen, to make sure that you've been liquidated. So prepare for the last stand. This is what we've been saying for quite some time, and we're pretty much right on schedule. We imagine, you know, the worst somewhere around 3/22 in a week from now. So there's going to be a major ramp up. This will be an interesting week, but you can already tell it's going to look pretty bad. Ohio is shutting down, ladies and gentlemen. Americans should be prepared that they're going to have to hunker down significantly, more than we as a country are doing right now to fight this outbreak. So this is coming from Dr. Fuchi out there. Fukushima, it might as well be, with their handling of the situation. Ohio governor issues an order closing all bars and restaurants beginning at 9 p.m. tonight. There have been 91 positive cases of COVID in Louisiana as of Sunday morning, all but 6 of which were in the metro New Orleans area. 2 people with unspecified conditions have died, 58 and 53, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, on a brighter note, Schiff staffer impeachment lawyer Daniel Goldman tests positive for the Wuhan supervirus. And of course, you know, all of these libtards are done for out there in these mega cities. And, you know, this next election should be rather interesting, to say the least. There really won't be many liberals left at the end of it. You know, people that were reporting the case early on in Wuhan are still missing. Journalists still missing out there in in China out there. This report says that disinfectant gels are carcinogens. Carcinogenic. So there you go. That's why you should stick with soap and water. In fact, you should forget all about you know, anything that has a scent. It'll only irritate the lungs and make the disease worse. Get rid of scented candles, perfume, volatile organic compounds. You know, air out 24/7, especially when you're doing the cooking. Forget the lotion as much as you can. Do it outside. All of it will make the disease worse for you. And it's better to start sooner rather than later. What is the video guy doing other than... Anyways, what does this say? It says now there are more cases outside of China than there are in China. We've got 80,000 plus cases outside of China, and that certainly escalated rather quickly. And, you know, they're just sitting back and relaxing. Ladies and gentlemen, we almost have to play a few minutes of the fucky interview.
And joining me now is a very familiar face these days in this crisis.
Meet the Press
Dr.
here.
Anthony Fauci, the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Dr. Fauci, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be.
Oh, what the fuck? I hate the
joining me
Matrix.
now is a very familiar face these.
Early on, we weren't in the situation where we could actually get the test out
yeah, of
the
course.
Feel as if we're on repeat.
Right.
Every week we're told, no, we're ramping up, and every week we don't ramp up.
Yeah.
Why should we believe that this is the week that this is going to work?
Yeah, Chuck, I think the reason is because we've really made somewhat of a sea change here. Before, I mean, obviously...
Week after week. There was another real interesting clip. I'm not sure if we're going to find it, to be quite honest with you. But
we've had quite a few patients under 50 have some serious underlying conditions with coronavirus. Does that tell you that maybe we've made some assumptions that aren't true?
No, actually, if you look, well, I wouldn't say that.
Well, it's possible. No, well, you get the idea. So they're holding back, right? The big enchilada. And it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. I mean, you saw the videos of China, right? Everybody's well aware. This is why we've been covering this for, 2 months. We usually do, a wide variety of broadcasts on all sorts of different types of eugenics programs, Gladio B events, government mischief, corruption, and the like. But when this hit the radars and we saw everything locked down, body bags everywhere, incinerators going full blast, this was obviously a bioweapon. This is like a Fukushima that erupted sometime in October, November. And, we just started hearing about it late December, January. And by the time people realized what happened, it was essentially too late. It had, gone to every major city. And our initial broadcasts were like, we need a Manhattan Project. We need to lock everything down at the county lines now. We got to isolate now before this thing, becomes endemic. And, on our Facebook page, we reached millions of people for weeks with that message. And we were playing all of these videos and, we were pointing out the obvious of how bad the situation is. And the people on television and the government officials, they were all pretending like, it was a big hoax, that this would just kind of blow over. And essentially they let all of this virus in, like a new 9/11. The planes are 20 miles out The planes are 10 miles out. Do the orders still stand? Of course the orders still stand, ladies and gentlemen. You've seen the Georgia Guidestones. You know they're out to get you. And in the later phase, after the lockdown, what did we see in China? We saw them coming house to house, liquidating buildings, people, you know, with goon squads. And we're like, oh, this looks bad, because all they have to do now is just show up in an ambulance and say that you're infected, and nobody's going to help you. Nobody's going to come close. And they're going to use that, you know, routine to justify everything they're doing. They're like, oh, we're going to arrest these people. We're going to lock down this place because we don't, you know, we're trying to contain the infection. Everybody's already been infected. The way this bioweapon works is that it infects an entire country before the first cases go critical. People have been infected for quite some time. The vast majority of people out there. Let's just say that. And that's why it's real important to stay ahead of this virus, to manage the disease, to act as if you've been contaminated, and to start, you know, loading up on supplements and vitamins and sleep, and, you know, boost your immune system however you can. You know, cut out the EMF in your life. It'll make a difference. But, you know, it's very important that people, you know, do what they can to manage this disease, because we're getting all sorts of reports that, you know, the worst is yet to come. And it's a, you know, it's a two-phase disease. There's the initial infection, which ends up being, you know, like bronchitis or like the flu. And then there's the secondary systemic infection, and it invades, you know, every organ pretty much, and starts eating away like Ebola. So all of this is, you know, to come out. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves here. We're going to stick with the news for the time being. But very important that you find yourself a detox elixir with all of the herbs, or as many of the herbs as listed in the video description, as well as get supplements like magnesium and zinc, just to name a few, but the magnesium will bring back your energy. In any case, let's get back to the news, shall we? Oh, what is it with the video guy? What is it with this matrix, ladies and gentlemen? Demons everywhere. And truly, you know, it's the epic struggle of good versus evil out there. That's what this is all about. You know, this virus is just one soldier in the army, and Sodom and Gomorrah is about to get wiped out. And, you know, it's going to be, you know, biblical in nature. Every major city in the world pretty much wiped out. And we know why this is happening. We know how this is happening, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, the next phase here is to survive. And, you know, for people that are living in the cities, that's going to be a very difficult adventure. So, what do they say here? They closed for 50 days, complete lock-off, sterilized whole cities, took temperatures of people everywhere upon entry and exit, built special hospitals, had special fever clinics, quarantined people in special quarantine centers. And, you know, it's still out of control over there. Despite what they're saying in the news, we're still seeing long lines of people going to the hospitals. We're still seeing, you know, streets emptied, locked down. There's no recovery. You know, it's been officially just about 2 months since the Wuhan lockdown, and there is no recovery. And while they are sending some people, you know, back to the factories, they're sending them there just to get infected. And they're missing, you know, quite a few, you know, raw materials, primary goods to, you know, assemble their products at these individual factories, and nothing is restarting. They're trying to, but nothing is restarting. And you look at everything the Chinese did to be, you know, to be in the position that they're in now, and it's still not enough. what will it take, ladies and gentlemen, to restart the world and the like? And, the answer looks pretty grim. Doesn't look like they're ever going to be able to do that in the long term. We're going to have to wait until they can, automate the workforce and people can just get deliveries at home, basically. We'll see what happens. But let's see. Testing is central. So the South Koreans are sharing, their experience. But testing is one thing. What we'd like to know more about is the therapy that, some of these countries are deploying with more success than others. In Germany, they have over 1,000 cases and only 8 deaths. The Scandinavian countries seem to be managing this well as well. And South Korea. What is their secret compared to Italy and Spain and China? Why are the death rates so high over there? And, we'll be tracking that information. We'll be tracking, the various therapies that are being deployed. But as of yet, there really isn't anything to write about. There is, buzz about one medication. But at this stage, it's really too early to see if it does anything more than suppress the symptoms. So this is Paris. Even after the lockdown, today at the market, you can see there's just, crowded people, or a crowd of people there. And, they don't take it seriously at all. So, they're going to be one of the worst hit countries. You don't see any of them wearing masks. I mean, in Italy, they're wearing masks. They try to lock things down, and still, obviously, not enough. Nothing will be enough because this is a bioweapon. It's made to work around, standard countermeasures and standard protocols. This thing leaps through 14-day quarantines. This thing spreads without symptoms. The virus particles are much smaller than, the filters and the masks. And so even a P100 mask isn't going to be 100% with this virus, let alone, an N95 mask and the like. So, this thing works around everything. It works around standard testing. Every country had huge issues with the testing at the get-go. And, there's still no guarantee that the tests that they're using now are 100%. And of course, they're going to move to, a whole different strategy real soon in America and other places. They're not going to continue to test because they know everybody's infected. What they're going to be looking to do is to lock everybody down and to carry out their Agenda 21 program. Now, how does that work? Locking everybody down basically commits everyone to their, residence, where people are just going to auto-contaminate themselves, reinfect themselves, or aggravate the disease with, industrial cleaners, if you will, or household cleaners like Clorox, bleach, chlorine, and the like, hand sanitizer, other organic compounds, and that'll make the situation much worse. And they'll try and restrict your movement. They're not going to want you to get fresh air. They may even come around and say, close your windows. They're going to spray the most awful smelling disinfectants you've ever smelled. And so you're going to want to keep your windows closed. And it's just going to make the situation worse, especially with, in households with more than one person, because, the viral load will just accumulate in an enclosed space. And the best way to think about, virus shedding is like secondhand smoke. Every infected person becomes like a lit cigarette. And, even one person in a room can infect, everybody in that room. And as more people get infected, the smoke gets thicker, becomes more difficult to breathe, quite literally. And that's essentially how this virus times out. through community virus load. And so there's going to be a lot of different dynamics to, look at and explore for scientists, not only, the viral load in the community, but in the house and in the person. Obviously, there's a direct link between virus load and symptoms, just like HIV. And wouldn't you know it, this virus is, is basically mixed in with HIV. And that's been reported in the news over and over again. More than half of Dutch patients in ICUs are under 50. So, we're getting, quite a bit of confirmation. Even in America, we've seen videos of, young people, including like, middle schoolers, in the hospital with this, having difficulty breathing, no pre-existing conditions, et cetera, et cetera. Government prepares measures for, total lockdown. What is this? Oh, it's like I Am Legend already in some towns. The animals are just running wild. What is it with the wild boars out there? And this was an interesting video because you just don't understand. Oh, so that guy just jumps off, and here come the paramedics. Take him off in a stretcher. That's some pretty efficient medical service right there. Now available at Costco. You can make your final arrangements if you like. Let's see. In Rome, all movement is basically illegal, and you're getting your papers checked. You got to have a special authorization to leave the house now. So we found out early on that Italy was basically the pilot program for the lockdowns in the Western world. And so, what we're seeing in Italy is of interest because we're going to see that exact same thing in every other country in the Western world. So in Spain, it's already begun, and it won't be long before France, UK, America are the same way. That you only be able to go out at certain times, certain days. You got to have your papers. You got to have proof. You got to come through a checkpoint. And it's just a matter of time before you're going to start seeing some demonic fuckery. And they're going to be like, oh, you don't pass our tests. Come with us and let us, throw you into one of these camps. Be prepared for that. Be prepared to wipe out all those bitches at the checkpoint when a thing like that happens. And, this could be at the grocery store. This could be, from now on, it's like Resident Evil out there. At any time, it could go unexpected. Be prepared for that. And, we actually had an encounter today at the store where it started looking creepy like that. And, sometimes you just got to be ready for, the last stand, if you will. Anyways, Hoboken, New Jersey announces daily 10 to 5 curfew. And, it always starts, it's going to start like this, where it's like, it seems like no big deal. Well, I'm not going out at, after 10 anyways. Or I won't be out there at 4 a.m. But then, the hours will expand, the restrictions will expand, and the lockdown will expand. They'll start taking your guns, they'll start taking everything. They'll start going door to door for guns, for public safety, and they won't let you go out. They'll come deliver, an MRE to your door here pretty soon. Anyways, let's see. This was the scene at O'Hare yesterday. All the people trying to come in from Europe or wherever to avoid the lockdown. And they are just crammed in there like sardines. And you can bet that, at least 1 in 10 of them are infected, if not more. And it's just like the Costco, adventure. Everything is becoming, a source of infection. And by now, everyone has been infected, just about. And so, we're all, we've all been dosed with their Zyklon C. And undoubtedly, there's going to be, cofactors that make the disease worse. Low vibrational energy, as well as, ultra low frequencies, just to name a few things that are probably going to make this virus hatch more aggressively. We could spend time on that, but not right now. More video. I mean, all these people are exposed, and they've all been released in the Chicago, so you can expect, more or less, you can expect like another wave of, of infections coming with all these people that have just, fled Europe. Let's see what else we got in the news. The government is under pressure to spell out how it's going to find so many more ventilators. And what we're hearing in Italy is that they're already having to make tough decisions as far as, who lives and dies. It's like triage in a war zone, basically. And so soon they'll start, lowering the bar. Anybody above 60, just send them back home. Anybody above 50, send them back home. Anybody above 40, send them back home. So, it's going to get overwhelmed quickly. Now the forecasts are, by this time next week, all of the hospitals, will be full, and everything will have to start going into FEMA camps. So expect things to, look quite a bit different by 322. I can't wait to do the 322 broadcast because it's going to be wicked as hell out there, ladies and gentlemen. Spanish police use megaphones to tell people to stay indoors or face $25,000 fines. So, it's starting to look like Wuhan everywhere. As expected. And to watch these people come on and be like, we're going to flatten the curve. We're going to lock things down for your protection. We're doing this to help you and to serve you. They should have done that weeks ago. But they waited till, the very last minute to make sure that everybody was infected. I mean, I remember doing the Super Bowl Sunday broadcast where we were like telling people, don't go out there, fingering the chip and dips with people. You're just going to get yourself infected. That's when they should have been coming on telling people, okay, let's shut down the bars and the restaurants and let's just wait and let this thing incubate and see where we're at. But they wanted to get everybody infected, just like they're dosing everybody with the fluoride, the vaccines, the death towers. It's the same thing. These people are absolutely responsible for letting this happen. Not just Trump at the White House, but all of these news stations around the country, NBC, ABC, CBS. They weren't doing special reports from Wuhan with all of these people dropping dead. You'd think they would have done something. The reports that you did get were like, expats that were stuck there trying to get out, and they were just going to the grocery store, and that was the limit of, their investigative journalism. And none of them showed you, what was really going on. All the people in the hospitals, all the people dropping dead, how they were welding the building shut. Nobody connected the dots, put it together, and put it on an evening, national news broadcast like ABC, World News or any of that. Nobody sounded the alarm the way they should have back in January or even February. We're now mid-March, and they're talking about, locking things down. Talk about, too little, too late. You know what I mean? So now the plan is basically to bury people alive in their homes with as few supplies and information as possible, so that they'll go out quietly into the night like they'd been walked into the gas chamber, And once they seal you, lock you down, seal you shut in your building, lock you down, there's not much you can do, especially if you don't have supplies. We were showing the videos of people just throwing money out the windows, or like, it doesn't mean anything anymore. You can't buy anything with it. People are dangling their jewelry to trade for a bag of rice. When we saw videos like that and people jumping off buildings and, all the ICUs and people dropping dead, people even burning themselves alive, they had nowhere else, they had nothing else to do. No food to eat, no escape, right? Goon squads were coming anyways. Full censorship. The world, didn't care. When you saw stuff like that, you start putting it all together. It was like, get your supplies. Get everything you can. Force yourself. And, look, I hope that everybody is as prepared as they can be for what's coming next. I think most of you that are listening out there are well prepared and, in a position, in a far better position than most of the sheeple out there. And it's really going to be, your responsibility to do as much good as you can when things start getting, Orwellian out there. And I think everybody's got a responsibility to, fight for the world that, we were brought up in. And I'm not sure how many of you remember the pre-9/11 world. I don't know how many people remember the 90s out there. But, I never left, to be quite honest with you. And that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the pre-9/11 world. We're fighting to bring back, our country to where it was, instead of just continuing on where it's going. And to be quite honest, this virus is perfect timing. It's going to wipe out all of these big cities, all of this evil before our very eyes. Just like that, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got a wonderful opportunity to, take our country back once this is all said and done. And you just have to survive the checkpoints. Most of the libtards are going to get infected, and they're going to drop out eventually. So it's going to be like the Hunger Games out there. Anyways, we should get back to the news. Plenty of news still to cover. Latest information. After SARS and H1N1, Singapore built a robust system for tracking and containing the epidemic. That system helped flatten their curve and save lives. Now, we're supposed to have a biodefense surveillance network. We've got a bioweapons program. We should have, circuit breakers, contingency plans in place for this kind of event, instead of, what actually happened. It's like they never planned for anything like this. They didn't get anybody ready. They didn't get anybody prepared. They didn't put anything into position. They didn't have, the personal protection equipment. All this stuff has to ramp up. The tests, they're going to be months and months behind this, epidemic. And it's like, how can this happen? Especially, to us, to America. How can this happen? We're supposed to be the most sophisticated, advanced, the richest nation on earth. But somehow they managed to, mess everything up. And it's just like, every other metric. We've got all of the advantages, a country could ask for. And yet somehow, we managed to screw it up. We can't deliver clean water. We can't deliver clean food. We can't deliver clean air. We can't deliver, proper medicines, proper vaccines. It's a catastrophe pretty much everywhere. Now, look, it might be better than the Dark Ages to a certain extent. But I think that's where we're headed after this virus does what it's come to do, ladies and gentlemen. What else we got? Yes, they've banned gun sales in Champaign, Illinois over the virus. But, we'll be seeing this in many other towns. And we'll start seeing all sorts of weird, decrees and legislation. You can't go out. You can't do this. You can't have guns. You must open the door for the wellness check. Otherwise, they'll send the SWAT team to, barricade and seal the building shut. Things like that. Everyone in New York City should assume they've been exposed to coronavirus. And, I think this is, what everybody should be expecting at this stage, that they've been exposed and that they should start a regimen of, immune system boosting if you will. And we've left, a few things in the video description that you should look at. Strongly recommend you spend time looking at that list and going to the organic store, the vitamin store, and trying to find as much of that stuff as you can. Start looking at detox elixirs with herbs, and look at the ones that are detoxing the liver, the lungs, and the kidneys. And chances are you'll find a lot of these plants there. And instead of trying to put all of these plants into a stew and making some kind of crazy ass tea or something like that, try to find yourself an elixir to mix in with water, and kind of like a magic potion. You'd be surprised what a difference it'll make in your life. Secrecy should be a higher priority than expediency. The slower the government's response, the more widely the disease will spread throughout the U.S. And this is pretty typical. I mean, we've seen this in every catastrophe, Katrina, Puerto Rico, whatever. As soon as federal government, world government gets involved, it's pretty much a catastrophe. States and communities are going to have to treat this like a flood, like a in-house emergency, and that will certainly go further. If you can count on one thing, is that federal authorities will show up to sabotage whatever progress you might be making, and they're there to make the situation worse, not better, each and every time. Not just in this case, but in pretty much every case. Their regulations, their interventions, just benefit the dark side, if you will. And, they're anti-life, to say the least. There's no excuse for, what we've seen here. They're going to try and make excuses. They're going to try and say, that they were actually ahead of the curve. They're going to try and, give themselves praise and tell you how wonderful they are for saving you. But never forget, at the beginning of this crisis, they let all of these planes in. They didn't, restrict travel. They didn't test anyone. They did everything they could to make the situation worse. They had rallies everywhere. They allowed all the sporting events. And again, people were talking about this in mid-January. They're 2 months too late with their lockdowns. Period. End of story. Anything else is just bullshit. Now, of course, we want to see them succeed, but they're not there to help you. You should be focusing more on what's happening in your state, with your governor, with your city, and state officials. As corrupt as they are, you'll probably get a little further with them than anything in the national kind of level. Anyways, moving on. We got to play some of these clips because there's definitely something going on with the Donald. Not sure if it's corona or the cerebrum, the gray matter, but let's see.
I am confident that by counting and continuing to take history,
it's the same thing.
A foreign virus in modern history. I am confident that by counting and continuing comprehensive effort to.
Let's see. What about this one? No.
I am confident that by counting and continuing.
Are they all the same? They must be.
I am confident that
yeah,
by
they
counting.
must be. Okay. Well, look, that speech, had quite a few instances where it just seemed like there was something off. But
I know you've been concerned about the crowds at bars and restaurants already over the weekend.
Yeah, they're all concerned. Especially, when you think about Meet the Press these days. I'm not sure how many people remember Tim Russert and the whole 322 thing back in the 9/11 days. How, both candidates for president were part of the same, Skull and Bones fraternity. They were cousins, one big club, and we're not in it. Well, Tim Russert exposed that on Meet the Press, and then they killed him. Just like Epstein, just like Seth Rich, just like the other Clinton, body bags and the like. No justice. And, of course, this president, let Hillary go, locked up Julian Assange, and the like. Playgrounds taped off, streets deserted. So it's getting pretty serious. And this is just the beginning, you know. Again, you know, we fully expect to see, you know, what we saw in Wuhan, full liquidation in every major city. And, you know, Wuhan is still a ghost town. Many of these, you know, big cities in China are still a ghost town. And the amount of people that were killed is probably way beyond imagination. Andrew Gillum was inebriated, high on drugs, you know, with some kind of male hooker. He's married, by the way, and he's caught in a hotel with some dude ODing on meth, you know, and they're all just like got the sex toys everywhere. Reminds us of the Ed Buck story. You know, all these Democrats are just hardcore into, you know, two men plowing each other on meth, and, you know, the more the male prostitute looks like a crackhead, the better kind of thing. It's just, you know, it's just wild. No surprise that, you know, this virus has come for them. Here's another Epstein customer, Dr. Fucky. Americans are going to have to hunker down significantly. And that reminds us, you know, they released Trump's test results. No, actually, they didn't release Trump's test results. They released a letter from the White House physician, which is not even an MD. We picked that up through the grapevine. He's a DO, a doctor of something, but not a medical doctor. So, you know, we'd like to see the test, which lab actually ran the test, what did they find, and what other drugs he might be on. Let's see. White House staffer yelled at me. This is like the governor of Illinois. After major crowds at airports, don't start talking about what we're doing. That's what they don't want. So, you know, the federal government has betrayed America. It has basically waged a war on Americans, and it is trying to exterminate every American out there. And so I don't know how you feel about that, but it's starting to sound like the Declaration of Independence. When, you know, a government becomes tyrannical, it is, you know, the duty of the people to, you know, get rid of that government. It's a nightmare. 5 residents demand inquiry into flaring at petrochemical plant. Be prepared for lots of flaring, lots of smoke and fire, and all sorts of lung irritants blowing in the wind. That's going to be part of their, plan during the lockdown. Is basically to gas you where you're at. They're going to come by with disinfectants and spray you like bugs, and so on and so forth. So be on the lookout for that. You should probably get air filters. You should probably prepare to hermetically seal, rooms in your house or in your apartment. And especially if you got more than one person, you don't want to be breathing in infected air while you sleep. So hermetically seal. You can use just, Scotch tape and just kind of like peel it off in the morning and stick it on the door frame, and scotch it back onto the gap. Tricks of the trade, ladies and gentlemen. You got to treat the whole world like a level 4 bioweapons lab. Germany to close borders with France, Switzerland, Austria, and that's big news because they're all New World Order, EU kind of thing over there, and they'd never close the borders unless it was pretty much the end of the world. So what else we got? We need a warlike stance against coronavirus. Federal government should engage in a Manhattan Project. So this is coming out in Meet the Press today, and we were saying this months ago. And where is this Manhattan Project? All they've done is brought together some kind of coronavirus task force with a bunch of Wall Street bankers for the most part. And their biggest priority is saving the economy, not saving people. Remember that. Entire New Jersey town told to self-quarantine. Remember that ghost ship, that cruise ship that they let in New Jersey? We did a story on that. Tim Walz, governor, orders all schools to close in Minnesota. So, first they start with the schools, and then it's, all non-essential businesses, and then it'll be the full lockdown, and then it'll be the wellness checks, the goon squads, the liquidation, the end. So, people need to intervene and take out the goon squads when they show up. Get your honey traps ready. Oh, yes, come on in, sir. You want to take our temperature? No problem. Boom, bitches. British supermarkets plead to shoppers, stop panic buying. They don't want you prepared. They don't want you to have anything. They're like, don't wear a mask. It's airborne. Don't wear a mask. Wash your hands. No shit. It's like imagine you're like walking in the park and you step on some dirty hypodermic, needle, that some crackhead has just used to inject themselves with. You go to the hospital, you explain the situation, they're like, just wash your hands. It'll be okay. That's basically what they're telling people right now. It's exactly the same thing. And, what would your reaction be? Imagine you go to the emergency room and you're like, I just stepped on a nail or, a rusty nail or a hypodermic needle. I need something. They're like, just wash your hands. What would you do? How angry would you be? And everywhere you go, they're all telling you the same thing. Just wash your hands. Just go home. That's basically what's happening here. And for the time being, there isn't like a miracle cure. So the best thing you can do is manage the disease. And again, we can't stress enough that people should be looking for the ingredients we've listed out in the video description on the ScrewTube channel. If you're watching this on Facebook, find our website, stfnreport.com, or our Twitter feed, Stranger Than Fiction News, and find this video on the ScrewTube channel and look at the video description and the like. But you should be looking for some kind of detox elixir with turmeric, thyme, rosemary, chicory, ginger root, artichoke, burdock, and if you can get other things on top of that that include oregano, eucalyptus, forsythia, asparagus, lysine, colloidal silver, vitamins B, C, D, and K, magnesium, plus other things. We'd highly recommend the spirulina and selenium combo to reduce viral replication, as well as a little bit of whiskey to kind of open up the air passages and to vasodilate the lungs. But everything is best in moderation. You want to find the right dose and start small and kind of work your way up, because some of these things like magnesium will send you to the toilet. So anyways, but they're all essential. And speaking of hygiene, this virus spreads through urine and feces, and so it is possible to reinfect yourself, auto-infect yourself, accumulate the infection in your lungs through soiled underwear. And men have to be aware of the last drop. It accumulates, and all of a sudden your crotch becomes a Bio-4 safety hazard, a level 4 bio safety hazard. So we recommend clean laundry twice a day, or diapers, whatever. Let's see what else. That's how the French are screwed, right? I mean, worst hygiene. They douche once a week, and they wear all the perfume, and they love the hand sanitizer. So we expect a high kill rate out there. It's really strange feeling to have. It's a real strange feeling having to wonder if the White House physician is telling the truth. Indeed, they're never going to admit that Trump's infected. But if he's not infected, that means they got the vaccine. Of course they got the vaccine. They let this shit in. So that's what we're suspecting. They're like, test? No, I ain't got symptoms. No, I got the vaccine. You know what I mean? So, anyways, never forget who's responsible for this virus pandemic. The Chinese. They lied to the world about the outbreak. They knew about it in November. They refused outside help to contain it. They silenced whistleblowers and killed them. Of course, they failed to lock down the borders. Let's see, what's this? Sister Monica out there at Times Square, and seeing the world from a Christian point of view, really kind of makes you see how bad the situation is. A lot of the sheeple out there think it's wonderful, the world that they've constructed is wonderful and the like, but from a Christian's point of view, the world today is an abomination, and it's it's full of injustice and wickedness, and it's become like the final entrapment. People basically only get to choose between bad and worse, and it's pretty much guaranteed damnation. And look, we're going back to the Wild West, ladies and gentlemen, and it's gonna be excellent. What else is going on here? Oh, this was a note from a soldier. He thanked me for my service. Thank you for being an American worth fighting for. That's what we need out there, real people again in our country. Armageddon and Target in Vegas. No kidding. We're hearing about mass layoffs in the casinos. Dead body of Massachusetts man on international flight landing in Boston to be tested. We could have had a drop dead virus incident on a flight. This was the grocery store after the shopping day, and we're hearing that stores are going to be reducing their hours, as well as putting in place quotas or limits on as far as what people can buy. Let us know what you're seeing in the comments, not just in the chat, but let us know what you're seeing in the comments as far as people coughing, ambulances going by. What are your stores looking like? Yesterday's comments were pretty revealing, to say the least, and people are, many people are reporting empty stores. Products are becoming more difficult to find, and in theory, everything is going to pretty much run out, and it's going to be interesting to see if anything ever restarts or if we're left to our own devices. Ladies and gentlemen, I think many people will be farming their own, fruits and vegetables this summer. We'll have to see. And what else do we got in the news? Well, let's see. Doctor from Seattle says his hospital will shortly cease doing any elective surgeries. They are preparing their ORs to be turned into ICUs. And this is the kind of thing that we're starting to see, but soon everything is going to basically melt down, and the like. This is a pretty interesting read, but we're not going to get into that. Brooklyn State Assembly members have coronavirus. If it hits Brooklyn, it's just going to go wild, and the whole society is going to break down. Cops are going to get infected. Everybody's going to get infected. Food's going to run out. And you see how wild it gets with, things like, Ferguson or whatever. So it's going to get pretty bad out there. We'll leave it to your imagination. We'll cover it as soon as it hits. Again, we're probably expecting things to get real interesting in about a week. 3/22. That would be exactly the 2-month anniversary of the Wuhan lockdown, and that's really when we should see the worst of the worst out there. Passengers waited in line for hours for customs at Dallas-Fort Worth. I mean, we're getting reports of this, all across the nation, and so you've got all of these infected people mixing in with people that perhaps aren't infected at the airport. And if this is their final destination, then all of a sudden you've just got like this huge dam of infected people that's just burst into the town, and just setting off another wave of infections. So, it's going to be real massive, starting in a week or two. And we probably expect this to crescendo, probably in 3 or 4 weeks. And that's when it's really going to be ugly. And by, 420, it's just going to be, it's going to be Resident Evil out there. Anyways, that gives people something to look forward to. At least one case of coronavirus confirmed at a nuclear power plant. So you can bet, all of these power plants around the world are going to, shut down eventually. There'll be no crews left eventually. So, and that's basically why we highlighted this report. Anyways, Italy confirms 4,000 new cases and 200 deaths today. Huge acceleration. And the numbers just keep changing every hour. Now it's like nearly 25,000 cases. And it's exploding. I mean, they're basically, they've basically become the new epicenter. And Spain's not far behind. And I think we'll discover that, states like Ohio and New York and California are just as bad. So the whole world was infected, virtually at around the same time. And what we're seeing now is part of a syndrome. So we know where this is going. We know how bad it's going to get. People that have been watching this series for the last 2 months, know exactly where this is going. And, what can you say more than that, really? But it's still a huge contrast between, what we're saying and what the television is saying. They're still giving people like this false impression of what this virus is about. It only hits old people. Only 2 or 3% will go critical or something like that. And most people will just have like a mild kind of, version of the flu. But the truth is much, much worse than that. And we've covered that in previous broadcasts. This is like airborne AIDS. You never get immunity to it. You can always get reinfected by it. And look, the immunity is really still up for debate. There might be evidence of short-term immunity to this virus. But, as far as we can tell, it doesn't look like there's a long-term immunity like chickenpox or measles or anything like that. So, we're not going to break down, the different immune system memory cells and the like, but there's plenty of reason to believe that, there is no long-term immunity for this virus or this disease. And it's just always going to linger. It's always going to come back, and it's going to mutate into something even more, even nastier than what it is now. That's just a matter of time. So all of a sudden, we're going to see a flare-up somewhere, and it just wipes out an entire town like overnight. And people are going to be like, "What was that?" Well, that was the XL strain of the Wuhan supervirus. But we may get something, a little less than that. Anyways, moving on. These are the obituaries before and after the outbreak. And this is from, a town, Bergamo. So before, the obits were like 2 pages. And the obits from last Friday from that town end up being like 10 pages. And we've been seeing, similar activity in our local paper, to be quite honest with you. They're not listing these deaths as coronavirus, but we're seeing a lot of older people just, than usual. And, they're all being passed off as, acute pneumonia or something, like that, heart attack, quietly into the night. But we're already starting to, the casualties are already starting to mount, to say the least. What else we got? Fox business anchor Trish Regan, who dismissed the coronavirus on air as another attempt to impeach the president, has been removed from her primetime slot for the foreseeable future. Well, there really isn't much business to report on anyways at this stage. And you know what? A lot of these anchors, especially the rich ones, are finding reasons to bug out. They're like, oh yeah, I don't feel like doing this show anymore. Judge Judy, just a bunch of them. They're all like taking early retirement. James Bond's like, oh, this is my last one. I'm done with this shit. They all know, this is pretty much it for the world as we knew it. I think everybody's, on the same page with that now. The world we grew up in is, completely gone, and now we've got this, pseudo world coming our way, where we're going to have to stay at home and plug into the virtual reality matrix and pretend like we can go outside and just order things and just stay at home. Kind of like, like one of these Avatar movies. Anyways, moving on. What else we got? Coronavirus. What does this say? A doctor says that everybody should have been locked down at least a week ago. And, even like 3 weeks ago would have been nice. 1,000 cases per day in a certain region in France. We picked up quite a bit of traffic in France of doctors saying, they've seen more patients themselves than what's being reported for that region on the news. So the situation is much worse globally than what is being portrayed. I think that should be obvious to everyone by now, but I think the seriousness of this situation is about to set in for everybody. And I think for those that have prepared physically and mentally for this over the past few weeks aren't as shocked or surprised as the sheeple that are standing in line at Costco right now, wondering how could this happen, why didn't anyone tell them, kind of thing. Doubling time of the numbers is around 2 to 3 days. So every 2 to 3 days we're going to see the numbers double and double and double, and before you know it, the numbers will catch up with reality. But for the time being, it's not 1,000 people infected or 10,000 people infected or 100,000 people infected. It's 300 million people in America infected, and chances are 1 out of 3 people are going to die. So they're going to have to get rid of 100 million bodies, and that's twice the people that died during the Second World War. So that should be a very interesting news story to cover, to say the least. Coronavirus can survive 3 hours as an aerosol, 4 hours on copper, 24 hours on paper, and up to 2 to 3 days on plastic or stainless steel. So, that's just kind of like, it just kind of gives you an idea of what you're dealing with. And, money can be infected, your packages can be infected. And in theory, coronavirus can stay alive for 28 days in an outside environment. Anyone who dissents from today's pervasive culture of political correctness will be visited by the thought police. An interesting op-ed in the British press. 13-year-old was brainwashed into thinking she's transgender. That's a very accurate way of describing it. In these Sodom and Gomorrah cities, they're trying to, groom and pervert children. And, in California right now, 1 in 4 children are in the process of transitioning. We don't expect many survivors in California. But, this brainwashing indoctrination is happening around the nation 24/7. in schools, on television. And you just see the crop these days, you know, with the Zoomers out there. And it's just like, you know, we're mass producing, you know, retards, basically, these days. And it shows. You know, it shows. I think Gen X is the only one that has any clue of what's going on out there. You know, the boomers are, you know, still in their, you know, revolution, if you will. You know, we went from the happy days, Leave It to Beaver, to where we are today. That was thanks to the boomers, right? They ruined it for everybody. Then Gen X, you know, kind of came along, 9/11, all that stuff, and we're still like, you know, awake. And then there's, you know, the millennials and the like. Generation Z, if you will, the last generation. Anyways, moving on. Troops on the streets to fight against the virus. You know, no army can stop this virus. No police force, no fire department, no cruise missile, nothing. But the army will be there to keep hospitals and supermarkets secure and escort food convoys, they say. Very reassuring. And to build tent cities. Of course, we're going to see the, you know, 2008 happen all over again. People being, you know, thrown into tent cities. And, you know, you have to think about, you know, what happened in 2008 and the like, and as well as all of these other outbreaks that have happened during election years. And it just seems like everything was, you know, ramping up to this. This is the big enchilada. And, you know, this is when you think of deploying a virus in December and, you know, having it, you know, go through the holiday season, the Christmas season, then the Super Bowl, then the elections. I mean, it's just, you know, super spreader event after super spreader event. And, you know, everybody's been infected. So can't wait to see, you know, the rest of the story. UK to put all citizens over 70 into mandatory isolation for 4 months. So that's pretty much like midsummer. What else we got? And that brings us back to yesterday's news. So we'll have to pretty much leave it there for this broadcast. I guess we just kind of wanted to update everybody on what the latest was. We expect the lockdown to be, you know, imminent, obviously. And they're already, you know, trying to precondition people for that with the rounds on the morning shows today and the, you know, the state of emergency declaration and the like over the weekend. So, you know, basically everybody's going to get locked down here for at least 14 days. It'll start with like, you know, some kind of 14-day declaration. Then they'll extend it to 30. Then 30 will be 60. 60 will be 90. And what we can say is that 2 months after the lockdown in Wuhan, it's still locked down. It's a ghost town. Factories are still shut. Grocery stores are pretty much empty. And they're going door to door, liquidating people. And, you know, they've got you right where they want you. Unless you've got supplies and you're ready for the goon squads. Then, you know, they might not be so happy. We'll have to see where this story ends. We'll be back tomorrow for another broadcast. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Much love out there to everyone in the audience. And once again, get those supplies that are in the video description. You'll be glad you did. Till the next time. If you're listening to this, you are the reason.